Hello. The National Assembly has passed the amendment to the National Holiday Act to move Nigerians Democracy Day from May 29th to June 12th. The Senate at the plenary on Thursday passed the amendment in accordance with the House of Representatives, which approved the new date earlier in December 2018. The passage followed the adoption of a report by the Majority Leader, Senator Ahmed Lawal, for the Senate to concur with the House. The three clauses of the amendment bill were passed by the Committee of the Whole when the Deputy President of the Senate, Ike Ekweremadu, who presided over the session, put them to voice votes. The legislation is now billed for transmission to President Muhammadu Buhari for assent. Buhari had in June 2018 declared that the Democracy Day would henceforth hold on June 12th of every year. The president made the declaration as the federal government honored the acclaimed winner of the 1993 presidential election, the late Chief Moshood Abiola, with a posthumous conferment of the highest national award, Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. Buhari had also conferred on Abiola's running mate in the election, Alhaji Babagana Gengibe, as well as former human rights lawyer, the late Chief Gani Fahimi, with the Grand Commander of the Niger. The second highest national honor was the 2019 May fixed as inauguration day for the second term of President Muhammadu Buhari. A lot of issues have just come to the front, and also a lot of things has been raised as concerns. Also, in another development, the Senate also confirmed Godwin Emefiele for a second term as Central Bank of Nigeria's governor. The Senate confirmed Emefiele's second term reappointment by President Muhammadu Buhari at plenary on Thursday. President Buhari had on May 9 sent a letter to the Senate informing members of his decision to renew the banker's tenure. By the CBN Act, the Senate must confirm the nomination before it can take effect. The Senate had instructed its Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions to submit a report on the renewal of Emefiele's tenure as CBN governor. On governance today, we are featuring the chairman Partners for Electoral Reforms, a civil society organization, in person of Mr. Ezenwa Nwagwu, to discuss the adoption of June 12 as Democracy Day by the Senate and also the reappointment of Godwin Emefiele for the second time as CBN governor and why the insecurity in the nation appears to be gaining ground and more. Welcome. My name is Annie T. Patrick, host of the program. Well, like you have it there, so much to talk about, and looking at what's happening in the nation, we have to talk about these issues and see if there's a way forward out of all this. Like I said, my guest is with me in the studio, and his name is Mr. Ezenwa Nwagwu. Hello, Mr. Ezenwa. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
It's good to have you.
Good.
Funny enough, someone made a very comic and said, "Do you really smile?" And I was asking the same thing when you came in. Do you smile at all? He was looking very serious.
Okay, so I didn't think that this was a night of 1,000 laughs. I thought it was serious business.
Yes, it is serious. I was just trying on a lighter
so
note.
You just get to meet me somewhere else.
Okay.
Maybe to know whether I smile or not.
All right, that's interesting. Well, like we have there in the prologue, June 12th is now the new date for the Nigerian Democracy Day. In all of this, from what we read there, do you think that's a good enough date with what it has for us to see as a Democracy Day?
Well, you'd have to realize that President Muhammadu Buhari bowed to pressure. It was not essentially a gift. It fell from agitation.
Okay.
We were in it. We were not told the story. If you understand that a lot of Nigerians had to pay the supreme price, people lost their studentship. A lot of people were incarcerated, and more importantly, those ordinary Nigerians who struggled to revalidate the June 12th, which was won by Chief Kemkeo Abiola. There is no doubt about that. Everybody has now accepted. So it is victory for the people.
Okay.
That we have to upturn that subterfuge by President Obasanjo to first and foremost diminish the importance of June 12th. It was deliberate diminution of the importance of June 12th that got us to the May 29, and it's something to, whether anybody likes it or not, to uh, congratulate the president for listening to uh, freedom seekers, people who invested their youth, people who invested everything they had to ensure that, first and foremost, that the military went back to the barracks and that we had um, returned to civil rule.
Okay, it's good. Like you mentioned, he bent down to pressure because he's not the first leader. Other leaders have come and have gone, and then they didn't see the importance of this. And then, in all of this, that timing, was it appropriate?
Let's leave. What has happened is that the Mr. President has done what is right.
Okay.
He's been celebrated for it, and those who thought that that was not going to happen are living witnesses to the fact that today, not just the president, the National Assembly almost unanimously is saying that
Okay.
May 29 is not the day we should celebrate as Democracy Day.
Okay. Well, like May 29 is just around the corner, and then he's going to just get his inauguration. He's going to come in for a second term, and not like the. Why don't we fix that particular date of June 12th for this whole purpose? If it's a transmission period, and we're trying to celebrate democracy.
Well, now you know that you have to get a bill to back up that pronouncement, and the process, the treadmill of making a law, which is going through the National Assembly, has grinded to its almost conclusion in the National Assembly. So you now need the assent of the president, and I'm sure that this is his being an executive bill. He will assent to it as quickly as possible. But as you know, what will happen with that, there will be handover on the 29th,
Sure.
but the form fair will be celebrated on June 12th, maybe this year. But maybe going forward, it could eventually put an end to when the handover period will be. I think that will be another conversation entirely.
Okay. Well, we're celebrating the fact that June 12th has been seen as the democracy day. Let's look at our electoral process. Good enough you you're grounded in this whole process. 2019 election. Let's look at the process. Was it something you would say went well to fit into what we're celebrating today, June 12th?
I think that we're dealing with a sociological situation. We're dealing with context and time. We're not where we want to be, but we have left somewhere. We may not want to get we may not have gotten the kind of election that we desired in 2019, but it was a shift from where we used to be. That's just the best way to say it.
Okay, many will still argue, because I'm still going to keep up to some others' arguments. Many will still argue that it was a flop to 2015, because Nigerians were looking for rather to consolidating on 2015 election.
Well, I think that first is you have to compartmentalize the conversation.
Okay.
There are places where we had a high,
Okay.
and there are places where we had a low.
Okay.
Okay, and then there are different stakeholders in the electoral process. So when you want to when you want to review, you are going to look at it holistically. You are going to look at how the electoral management body fared, which is INEC. Okay, so you would want to talk about the logistics challenges that we had. They call it a nightmare that led to the postponement of the election. Okay, what was the punctuality index in terms of when polls opened and all of those issues? You will find out that as soon as that mishap happened, the electoral management body upped their game. If you remember, the INEC chairman and the national commissioners continued almost on daily basis to bring the country up to scratch as to where things are. Okay, so you would then look at the role of security agents, because if materials will get to where they have to get to on time, then security agents will have a role to play. To the shame of our country, we will have to take our electoral materials to the Central Bank of Nigeria. We will have to go to the Central Bank of Nigeria and follow those materials to the RAC, that is the registration area center, where eventually all of this, the trust threshold is very low. You have to ensure that the security, and if the security doesn't follow the materials, you don't move. So when you now want to situate your punctuality analysis and logistics, you would put a little of the blame for INEC, but you are also going to talk about the vendors who have responsibility to bring their vehicles on time, who have responsibility to bring good vehicles, who also have responsibility not to renegotiate already agreed terms midway into all of that played out so you need to engage all of those. Then you want to also look at the politicians and their candidates. So if you're going to be talking about ballot box snatching, if you're going to be talking about vote buying, if you're going to be talking about violence in the electoral process, where will you locate that? You're going to have to locate it with the politicians. And there, so many times people like to deal with the one that is easy. So it's easy to say INEC, but we're not, in my view, we're not engaging other stakeholders who have responsibility to also give us clean, free, fair, acceptable election. Okay, so when I talk about, when you say it's a flop, you can look at a particular area. Okay, we did in 2015. We did move the elections as well. We didn't hold the elections when it was supposed. Yes, there was supposed to be an improvement, but in dealing with that challenge, you now have to look at what is the issue. People say, "Oh, INEC had this number of years to plan for elections," but remember, in 2015 November, when the commission, this new commission came, from that day to the next election, they continued to conduct elections. 191 elections between that 2015 and 2019. So you didn't even have a reprieve. And some of these elections were consequences of the fallout of the 2015 elections, which now dragged you into the court, annulling some elections, giving you different dates, and all of those issues. So we need to have bigger, deeper conversations about the whole gamut of the electoral process. Okay, and deal with, first and foremost, which are the ones that are located within the domain of the politicians, their internal party democracy issues, how they sell their forms, how they deny people who won elections internally, all of those issues, and how it impacts the electoral process itself. Then what does the law say? Okay, because election is a law-driven process. If the law says if you do XYZ, this will happen. Nigerians are people who want to do XYZ and don't want that other thing to happen. So when you have a regulator who says this must happen, they say, "Oh no, it's not okay." So when you say it's a flop, go to Akwa Ibom and tell the people of Akwa Ibom, your state, that their elections didn't count. Go to Kwara and tell them that their votes did not count. Go to Imo and tell them their votes didn't count. Go to Bauchi and tell them their votes didn't count. You understand? So you have pockets of successes, but because you're dealing with a sociological situation, there are also challenges. And what needs to happen is to honestly engage those challenges and put them on the table and move forward. So for me, I think we had solid improvement in some areas, but we also fell short in some areas.
Okay, good enough. We fell short in some areas, which you have agreed with, and we're looking at I'm looking at the democratic process, because we're talking about the whole essence of the democracy day. Let's look at where we were some years back, because elections started in 1999 and all that. Let's see what areas, like you mentioned, can we do better? Is it in security, or in terms of the trust in which we should have in the electoral body or the umpire? Because if we don't trust the umpire, we can't trust the process.
No, but the idea of trust is you can choose not to trust, because it's a competitive enterprise. If you commit a foul in if your favorite player commits a foul in a match, you are likely going to be lenient. You are likely going to be nice and say, but if it's somebody who wants his foul, you say it's foul. Okay, you get what I'm saying. The issue of trust is to look at the improvements. You can't deny the fact that you lived in a country where you were going to be voting, and the results of where you are voting will be announced. It's not very far away. 2003, 2007. Even the winner of the election came out to say, "Look, this election is flawed." and then set up the waste panel. And there are a lot of recommendations that came from that waste panel. How much of it have we engaged? How much of them are we dealing with? Do you understand what I'm saying? So the point is that you can stay on the negatives. And let me tell you something about that is interesting about election. You have 120,000 polling units across the country, and then you have 56,000 thereabout voting points. Now, something happens in 3 polling units. Let's say violence in 3 polling units, or ballot snatching. So you report that there was violence
out of 3 out of over 2,000 in thousands.
So you for the people who there were no violence in their own area, it isn't justice to say the process was bad because of, you understand. So when you want to identify, you identify in terms of statistical accuracy and say there were violence in 5 polling units. Okay? Then you have to also understand what that violence is. Okay? Violence within the presence of the voting area or violence in Garki. If there is violence in Garki and there is no violence in the polling unit, you can report that there is violence in Garki, but was there violence in the place where people were voting? Those are issues, and that's why I told you that there are laws that govern election. Many times, because everybody thinks that election is an all-commerce affair, people are not interested in looking at whether laws have been breached. Okay? If there are 10 grounds on which a returning officer cannot make a return in the law, okay, if those laws are breached, should they make a return so that you'll be satisfied? Do you understand what I'm saying? So when a regulator is serious, we are Nigerians, we want strong institutions.
Yes.
When we say strong institutions, what do we mean? We mean institutions that are interested in following the rules to the letter.
And then due process as well.
And the due process. But anytime we have institutions who do that, the same us who want strong institutions, okay? Inconclusive election. What is the reason for inconclusive? Will an electoral body want to reorganize, go back to run an election that day? There must be a reason. Those reasons are the things we interrogate. Why will we cancel? If you overvote, okay? If you overvote, that return cannot be made. But politicians want to overvote and ask you to count that vote. And if you don't count that vote, then you are not so it depends on which side you are at every point in time. Okay? And so what then happens is that we allow politicians and their collaborators in the media to direct the narrative. But what will help us as citizens is when I read something about elections, I go back to the Electoral Act. I go back to INEC guidelines. I go back to the constitution of the country and put those 3 documents together and say, did the regulator breach the rules? Because there are no time for those details. So we discuss election from the purview of, and anybody who tries to point you to the law, because it is a difficult, a testy conversation, you are likely going to be pigeonholed into one party or the other because somebody benefits from this argument. There is no way you argue in a political situation that somebody does not benefit. And anytime somebody is benefiting, he's happy with you. So if it is a PDP person that your argument supports, you say, oh, it's nice. Then if he's not supporting him, you say you are APC. So the blackmail that brings shuts the ability of people to even honestly engage the process so that they are not called, A or B. But the truth of the matter is that you have to continue to engage from the point of knowledge and from the point of the law and the point of the guidelines that guide that process of election. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the point, therefore, is that on the whole, I think we had a shift in 2019 in terms of the ability of the regulator to wade in politicians, and they are not excited about it. And that is why you have big losses for some big politicians who ordinarily you would think have won, ordinarily. And there are states where the governor himself came and addressed the press and said, this is the first time we're having an election in our state. and I'm talking about your state, by the way.
Why are you specific? Why are you specific about my state? Well, it's not about me at the moment. It's about what's happening. Okay, fine. It's good enough you've made this created this scenario for one to understand. But let's look at what point would Nigerians, or what points can we regulate some things about the politicians, because this seems to be one of the major challenges we have, obstructing the process. What do you think the government
Yes,
can, or the
because
body can do differently?
no, it's all of us. We over respect the politicians, and that's the reality. We respect the politicians a lot. Okay, we have oversighted INEC to the point where people are going to prison in INEC. People are in court for malfeasance. Okay, right on television, we saw a resident electoral commissioner asking that a returning officer be arrested in public glare. That is an ocean cleansing itself. But the political class they twist the conversation in a way that it looks like they are the victim. Okay, but I've told you, is it where do you have talk about somebody going to pour ink inside the ballot paper? Who does that? That person is an agent of a politician who feels cheated, who feels he may not win. Where do you have somebody going to pay as much as 20,000 naira to buy permanent voters card from people so that he can have voter suppression? Okay, get to the area of your opponent where you think you are not going to win. You know the card, you buy it off them, not because you are going to use them. We saw that in 2015. Who was buying?
Okay.
Did we have a conversation with those buying? Did we engage them? Are we bothered about that? Did we call them out?
So it's just about, apart from the buying, there's always the selling as well.
No, did we call that out? We are happy. Oh, people sold. When you talk about vote buying, you don't talk about how that devalues your citizenship, how that makes you look in the eye of the person who is buying from you, that you are cheap.
Okay.
And owes you nothing. Okay, but that's not part of the conversation. It's easier for us to say, oh, INEC, INEC has a role to play in election, but the much more important role are played by the security agents, who, when they compromise, who, when they don't also play their own game very well, affect the outcome of elections. The politicians and their political parties, their roles affect the quality of your elections. Okay, and then the voter. If we say we are not selling, okay, if we are not going to buy, if the buyer comes and nobody is selling, he will go away. But people willingly sell, because also there are challenges with the whole idea of even local government elections, which we don't want to discuss. We don't go to that place. Okay, subnational elections should teach people how to vote. Is that not so?
Yeah.
But when governors ambush the electoral process at that subnational level, okay, the kind of elections states organize, if it is organized at the federal level, this conversation won't be going on. Okay, so we need to take the deeper conversation about our election much more seriously, from the local governance process up to the national level. 2023 is still far. We need to call everybody to the table. Yes, INEC, you are trying to improve your game, but there are also elements within INEC who don't believe in those reforms that are taking place there, and are subverting the process. There are no arguments about that, but it is conclusive engagement of every stakeholder determining that we want a good election that can give us what we want.
Okay, I know before the election, INEC had called out for the judiciary to also work in hand because they had too many cases in court. And I'm speaking from the 1999 presidential election, which was celebrating democracy today in June 12th. What we had then dragged for a longer time before this time. So, do you think this period it's been fair with the court cases we've had?
Well, there is also, in terms of litigations and all of that, there are reforms that are narrowing the time with which those electoral issues are resolved.
Yeah.
That's progress as well.
Of course.
Okay, or like where you drag on, where politicians just said, look, just announce us. If you announce us, forget about the court. Okay, it used to be something. Just announce. Just announce me. And some character in Imo State did that this time around, but he's paying for it. INEC had to withhold his certificate of return because of the malfeasance that took place in that election. It wasn't happening before. What it will have happened is that, look, just announce him, let him go for. Those are progress, okay? So litigation, in terms of the number of days you can file, all of those have been shortened, okay, in such a way now that it is likely that we're going to resolve most of the issues even before the so that people don't enjoy the perquisites of that office.
Okay.
Continually, there are cases that have lingered up to 4 years. There are some that the illegal occupant of that office, have enjoyed all the perquisites of that office before maybe 1 to 2 months. The person, somebody else, is now announced. I think it's all part of what we have to be engaging going forward.
All right, it's been quite engaging with you as well, talking. But let's take this break. When we come back, more to talk on, especially with the reappointment of Godwin Emefiele for the second time. Stay with us. Back. It's still your program Governance Today, and I still have my guest with me in the studio, Mr. Ezenwa Nwagwu. And like I said, we'll be talking about the appointment or reappointment of the CBN governor for the second time, and this has raised a lot of issues, a lot of concerns. People are saying, is that the right direction? Is that the right person that should fit in? If you listen to some arguments in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, they had some of those things to talk about in relation to the economy. Well, Mr. Ezenwa, let me throw this to you right now. For you, the reappointment of Godwin Emefiele for the second time as CBN governor, is that the right thing to do?
Well, for me, really, I think that there is a concern. There is this trend where we just think that once people are outside, they are good, and that anybody inside is bad. Okay. So the tendency for us to want changes, always wanting, but there's also a place for stability in terms of people understanding, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and improving if they can. So I don't have a problem with reappointment, but I have a problem with in not attaching service delivery and value for money for the appointments that we make. So I've seen Mr. Emefiele. What is he supposed to do in the next 4 years as central bank governor? Oh, you say, his task is well cut out. Has he played that role very well? Did we measure? In the past 4 years, did we look at what he's supposed to do and then tick and say he performed exceedingly? If it is on the basis of that he's reappointed, I don't have a problem. And then I and you can also know what he's supposed to do in this next phase. It's not just the CBN people, because now, since the National Assembly has to confirm him, it means that his role has direct impact in the well-being of citizens of this country. This man can single-handedly dash somebody 125 billion in 2018. Anybody who can do that is not supposed to be left alone in terms of citizen oversighting his engagement. So I am fine with reappointing people, but I'm not very okay with not attaching what they are supposed to deliver beyond his role as a governor of CBN. We want to also see that this is the things that will happen between now and his next, tenure. These are the things he must achieve. If he does not achieve them, this same Senate can recall him and begin to find a replacement. So that's where I stand on that. I don't have a problem with people staying, you know, because I also know that many times the lobby is, you know, I'm out here very, and you hear that conversation, especially from those of us in civil society, you know, those people there, you know, we are the good people, they are the bad people, but it's not true. Many times the person who was appointed was somebody who was here, who was also a good man until he was appointed, and then he begins to say my hands are tied, you know, you don't understand the system, and then begin to educate us how the system works. You know, this system that he has said once while here he's the good man, once he gets in here. But the bigger challenge for me is, where are the deliverables? Where are what are the things that, what are the demands that we are putting on those that we are appointing, so that when they don't fulfill those things, we can begin to engage them publicly and ask for their for them to go to somewhere else and try.
All right. Don't forget the phone lines are there on your screen for you to call in and make your contribution. Let me get back to you on that. Yes, you talked about deliverables. Let's look at how do we rate the nation's economy during this tenure, the first tenure, because I'm looking on the side of the economy. How well have we fared as a nation? If we have a CBN government that should look oversee certain things when it comes to the nation's economy.
They appoint us and the National Assembly that's the quickest confirmation that I've seen in a long while.
That's the same reason I'm asking.
No, that's what I'm saying, is the quickest. So those who confirmed him must have their basis for confirming him.
Okay.
But like I said, in terms of deliverables, how do I want to assess the CBN governor who were told that, you know, dollars, there are people who trade on dollars apart from the formal market. Okay, all of those issues, Nigeria, these are conversations that are going on in terms of people who get this at official rates and then come back to sell it in the I want to look at that. I want to look at a CBN where there are no adverts for vacancies. There is, since I've known CBN, I've never opened the newspaper and see vacancy in Central Bank of Nigeria. Does it mean people don't leave CBN? People don't retire? People. So are we creating an agency that is I mean, some kind of incentive for the elites of the country and their children? I want to see that changing. Because I know that they had secret employment, and we tried to engage them. They didn't come open. There are no adverts anywhere. I want to see a CBN that is more open, that is more transparent in terms of even his own internal issues. The people of Nigeria should know. Okay, you can't wake up and go and give a university money, you know, and say you are ex endowment. CBN. I know there are powers within the law, the CBN law, for you to do that, but that has to be done with certain circumspection. Okay. In terms of, so whether you look at it from the ordinary person, in terms of whether the what they call micro economic indices is paying anybody, what you need to deal with is to bring it to particularize it and say, how have I fared under this period? And I don't think it's a good story for a lot of Nigerians.
Okay, that's for a lot of Nigerians, and some still, there's this school of thought that his own deliverables, like you mentioned, has been in the area of the Anchor Brass program, the agricultural sector boosting and all that. What difference? What else can he bring differently to the table? If not that, let's pick this call and then we'll see. Okay, I think we missed that. We'll have to get that again. But like I said, is agriculture not just his focal points? Because that's what most people think. Is he bringing something different?
We want to see him bring something different. Like, you see, the problem with Nigeria is that there's a lot of mantranization. Everything is a mantra. Okay. Agriculture, the food belt, all of those English that does not translate into food on the table of most Nigerians. We want to see that change. And it's not just him. We had Minister of Agric who will tell you that the Abakaliki rice belt, and now we're hearing about a Kebbi rice belt. All of those things are real. But for the ordinary Nigerian, it is not translating into food on their table. Okay. So the difference will be, how do you then draw down all of this to such a way that the ordinary Nigerian can feel the impact of the reforms that is playing out? That's not to say that nothing is happening. Quite a lot is going on in terms of, you know, encouraging farmers. A lot of people are going back to farming, getting incentives. I know that entrepreneurs are also getting resources, but cumulatively is not coming to majority of Nigerians, and that is why you are hearing most of the hue and cry that you get.
Okay, all right. It's good that we have your thoughts because, like I said earlier, a lot of concerns has been raised that they're not seeing the things, just the same thing you're saying as well. But let's look at in terms of value for the Nigerian naira note. There's been this cry that our money doesn't have value out there. It's just
I know
dollar.
there's been relative stability
Yeah.
in terms of the naira and all of that, but the bigger challenge is that we need an understanding of whether it is true that there are people who get this money at what they call CBN rates and then put that back in the black market and then reap off a lot of profit from that.
Okay, let me hold you on that
yeah.
and let's speak the sorry. Hello, good evening. Hello. Hello. Okay, I think we're having a bit of network issue, but you can still keep trying. I'm sure you'll get through. Yes, the whole CBN rate thing is what is bringing concern to most Nigerians because when you go out there, our money doesn't really have that particular value like you expect it to have.
Well, times change as well. I don't think that what we used to buy, in terms of whether there is a difference many times when people talk about, value and all of that. And the way I see it is that, yes, you bought Peugeot for 5,000 naira, but how many families had Peugeot?
Okay, let's pick this call first.
You-
Hello, good evening. Oh, all right. Let's keep trying. I'm sure you get through. Okay, put you for at what time?
No, you hear in the 70s, in the 80s that people could buy a Peugeot, brand new Peugeot for 5,000. So what you do is that those of us who were born at that time, how many families had access
Okay.
to cars? There are people whose parents lived and died without owning motorcycle. Okay, so in terms of times and value, there are times this rice that we are talking about today that is a staple. There was a time that it was a Christmas food and it was Sunday food for other people. So we need to understand those,
Okay.
but and begin to talk about, when we talk about value, we need to talk about how what the reforms that are taking place translates into improving the lives of the people within the context of the time that we live.
Okay.
Not to always glamorize a past that even those who lived in that past, I keep asking friends, I said I don't know when anybody told anybody that things are good. Growing up, I don't know anybody who called his child and say, you are going back to school, you need all you have, you need
Yeah.
it, things are so good. We started hearing that things are bad
From the one.
as an adult. There was no day anybody told me that things are so good. It is after that time that people come back. Who knows, in the next 20 years people will be referring to this time as very good times. Okay, so what we need to do is to say, look, within the context of the time that we're having this conversation, what do we need to do to make life livable and better for a greater percentage of our citizens? How can we reduce the hemorrhaging that is going on in terms of the stealing of public resources by a few Nigerians? Okay, how do we operationalize the chapter 2 of our constitution, which talks about free and compulsory education, okay, for Nigerians? How do we deal with 10 million out of school children? And this 10 million out of school children, don't make the mistake to think that it's in a certain part of the country, because many people make that mistake. Anytime we talk about 10 million out of school children, in the southeast, south, southwest, children are being raptured out of school. They are raptured because they can't pay fees. Even when you hear free education, the under the table fees that are coming up are taking those children out of school. So we need to get them back. And as we know now, there is this Paris Club money that the deductions have been made. About 142 billion is being put in the hand of UBEC, and 2% of the consolidated revenue funds will be coming to them. We need to oversight all of this. We need to begin to show interest in the economics that is driven by the people, the one that deals with the needs of the people, not in the glam. There is too much. Anytime I feel this glamorization, before now, and I lived in that before now, and I didn't see that much difference. But I am living in today, and I have responsibility to hold those who have responsibility to make life better for me today accountable.
Okay. Well, good enough. We've done this. Let's look at the transmission into the next tenure.
Yeah.
What should the government be doing differently with all of this put in place? The reappointment of a single, hoping that he comes with a better thing on the table. The Ninth Assembly is also coming forth. What should the people be expecting? What should we be getting different?
Do you want a textbook analysis?
I don't know.
Okay. First is that the nature of the process that brings people to government in Nigeria makes it difficult for them to be people-centered.
Okay.
The cost of governance is huge. People pay as much as ₦1 million to delegates to elect them to your National Assembly. They bought votes. They settled security. When they come to make law, in the first few years of their stay in the National Assembly, they are going to be working to recoup those monies, unfortunately. And we all played a part in it, because that ₦2,000 we collected from that person, he didn't bring it from he invested it. In fact, they are not just investors, they are merchants, So I want to lay that premise so that your expectation, because many times your expectation, the Ninth Assembly, the cost of coming to that place is so huge. So we need to put a different kind of pressure to get them to work for the people.
Okay.
It's something we must do. If we don't do that, what does that mean? What it means is that we have to follow what code calls connected development, what they call following the money.
Yeah.
We have to have more interest in following the money than we used to follow before.
And even constitution
Yes.
as
Now
well.
we want to have a National Assembly that we know where they stand when they vote. Ninth Assembly, we want to be able to see where you are voting. Okay? We don't want no, nay. You hide under that. So my representative I'm not able to know where he stands on any matter.
Okay.
Okay? If there is an anti-corruption bill that is being discussed, I don't know whether he supported or not, because I can't even go to what they call the Hansard and see where he voted. I want to be able to know when he's going on committee assignment. I want to look at television and see that the place is filled up. And when people are not there, there should be explanation. They are working for the people. We can't always be hiding under oversight. Okay, that he went on oversight function. That oversight function should be clear to people where it's taking place. Committee meetings, we should know, so that when we have absentee lawmakers, we should be able to know that the man won election and he's still minding his business. He has not come to deliver in terms, because he's trying to recoup whatever money he spent. Those are for the executive. We don't want to see anybody become minister without telling us what portfolio he's going to be holding and telling us what he will be doing in the first 1 year of his appointment. If somebody is appointed Minister of Defense, 300 kilometers between Abuja and Kaduna should not overwhelm that person. We should be able to know that the task you have is to clear the kidnappers, clear insurgents on that road, so that people can have a free pass. Okay? If you don't do it within the next 6 months, please tender in your paper. I'm just talking in terms of what are we telling those who we are appointing. We should take off the hand of IMF and the World Bank in bringing experts for us. They have been bringing experts, Harvard trained. We've seen them. Okay? It has not translated into good governance. It has not translated into development. So we should be more interested in putting out the people that we want to appoint, so that Nigerians can assess them. You are in diaspora. You are living in diaspora, we don't know what you are doing. Once it comes to office, you pack your CV and you are in Nigeria, and then they say, oh, he's London trained, he's British trained, he's US trained. It's time that we're engaging in clear terms. We don't want somebody telling us that if you give phone to farmers, it will translate into, we have seen that it didn't work. It has not given us anything. What I'm trying to say is that for those who will be appointed from the executive, there should be clear, palpable deliverables that they will be performed, and Nigerians should know it. Nigerians should know what we are holding. But more importantly, if we hear of public hearing, we should make it truly public, because public hearing is public hearing. We should not use security to make sure that people don't come for public hearing. And don't tell us about memorandum, submit memorandum that we know nobody is reading. Okay, when you come for public hearing, people should be allowed to speak and listen to them. If you want to do public hearing for 2 days, 3 days, let it be 3 days. Don't do 1 day public hearing on a very serious issue. And when somebody says he wants to speak, you say, well, okay, please submit your memorandum. We do a lot of ritual in our country, and that ritual is no longer beneficial to bringing development to our country. Then we should not confuse personal ego fights to be institutional. If an individual has a quarrel with somebody in the executive, it is not the National Assembly quarreling with the executive. I think that that's confusion always, because the work of the National Assembly is clearly stated. And the National Assembly is an anti-corruption agency. A lot of people don't know that. It's an anti-corruption agency. So the corruption in an anti-corruption agency is not tolerable. You are the one who oversights the purse of the country. The resources of the country, you are the keeper of the purse. If the rat is told to keep watch over fish, then there is trouble. So if people who are going to National Assembly understand that they are going to work in an anti-corruption agency, it will make the difference for our country. Because you have committee on everything. Committee on downstream, committee on upstream, committee on EFCC. All those committees are actually there to ensure that the rules, the processes, the procedures, including financial regulations of those agencies that they're oversighting, are up to scratch. So once they derelict that responsibility, the country gets into crisis. Monies are stolen collaboratively. Okay? Because if it's not collaborative, you should shout. The idea of motions, okay, all those motions that we are, is that, okay, we went to oversight a Ministry of Finance. We saw that they have given out money that they should not give out. And then you bring out, well, once this settle me, I settle you syndrome continues to exist, the Nigerian people will be shortchanged. And the reason we can be shortchanged is if we also are not interested. As we speak now, not many people know their local government has a budget. Okay, we follow the national budget, but if I ask my friends, what is the budget of your local government? Many of us don't know. Many of us don't care. We don't want to know, because we have our aloofness. Okay, we discuss budgets, but we don't follow it. We are not interested.
Okay. Well, like you've heard, you need to follow your budget. Like he said, maybe we'll need to apply the follow the money syndrome to see how we can keep tabs with what's happening. But before I let you go, because we're almost ramping up, let's look at the state of the nation when it comes to insecurity. You mentioned it's part of what you're saying, that one needs to tackle all these issues. But why is it a hard nut to crack in this present administration? It's been from one issue to the other, from state to state. What is it intelligence gathering that's a challenge, or what is it exactly that's been holding it back? Okay.
Okay. Any country that is not interested in equal opportunity employment in its security agencies cannot talk about security.
Okay.
So the last set of people who fought civil war have almost retired from the army. So the new crop of people are political people. The recruits to the police is nominated majorly by politicians. If the police is recruiting 10,000 people today, 5,000-6,000 of those people will be recruited by politicians. List will be taken to National Assembly. every chairman of one committee would, the chairman police committee will bring, the speaker will have, the senate president will have, the deputy senate president will have. Those people cannot be disciplined. Your army is also invested in that way. Okay, so that's one big problem. The next other problem you have is the role of international defense complex. Do they want arms to? They need arms to continue. Okay, so those planes we are buying. If you completely take out insurgency, will you buy those planes? You need them for intelligence. In the past, they used to have agents. It is agents. Now they are in country. They are working with your military. They are working with your navy. They are working with everybody. They are in the presidency. Okay, so listen, we scratch these issues, and you see what I'm saying now. I'm not the only one that knows it. We have politicized security. The people who go there now, let me tell you, the insurgent, the person who is in insurgency, his first oath is to die for the cause that he believes in. The soldier is supposed to lay down his life for his country. The soldier that is there today and the police that is there does not want to lay down their life for the country. They want to be heroes. They have a role model. Their role model has oil well, and he has so much money that he doesn't. All he did was that he served in the army. So the new model, the people who are modeling for them today, they want to come out from the army, not to lay down anybody life for anybody. They want to own, they want to have good life. So until that paradigm is changed in the mind of people, the insurgents who want to die will continue to have, advantage, because the people who are confronting them are not ready to lay down their life for anybody. They want to make money. They are transactional.
Okay. I want to say very big thank you for coming on the program tonight.
It's my pleasure.
All right, we hope to do this again some other time and hope to see you.
I'm your slave.
All right. Well, that's it on governance today. You've heard it there. So much happening, and so much to be tackled, so much to be looked into if we want to have a better Nigeria someday. My name is Anita Patrick. Many thanks for watching, and do enjoy your evening.